Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu-alaikum. Ji ayanu, pakhair-agale, ni hao, chunishumme, washmale, ohai gozaimasu, guten Morgen, hola, bonjour, privyet, kaifa hal? Hale shuma chatore, ahlan wa sahlan, marhaba, buna, mucho gracias, swabi, ab bhalli kare aaya. Hoş geldin and ayo sayo khuya mora chivato chi haljud kalimera khairutan and a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and watching World this morning. Alongside my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Miss Hajar Sati. I happen to be Shahzad Hasan Khan, and we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well in this cold weather, because fortunately or unfortunately, I think that this cold has actually taken a toll on everyone over here in Pakistan. We might not have experienced such a cold, I think, previously in our lives as well. But first things first, hello Hajar, assalamu alaikum. How are you feeling today and what do you have to say about the cold?
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much, Jazakallah khair. It certainly is a very, very dry weather, dry winters, and I think we have experienced rain last year, right? So it has been a very, very long time, and some of the people were forecasting, especially from the from the weather department, that we are going to witness some rain after the 15th of this month, but I don't see any respite anywhere anytime soon. And because of this a very dry winters, a lot of people, especially in the South Punjab, they are experiencing lots of troubles when it comes to watering their crops, and it is negatively impacting them. And this brings us our focus or our attention into one of the very pressing problems, that is the anomalies that we experience in these weather patterns, which is related to the climate change, and certainly this is not of Pakistan's making. So we hope and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us respite, especially in the form of the rainfall, so that this dryness can be eliminated, and lots of other problems, especially the cold and the sore throat, which is spreading rapidly in the closed spaces, it can be controlled because of the dry weather that it is spreading. But having said so, Shahzad, I was going through very interesting news, and since you love listening to the music, and it is said about the music that it is a food to our soul, right? So
I disagree with it, but we'll talk about it later on. But yeah, please continue.
Okay, so I think a good music is always a delight to listen, and it definitely uplifts your mood, but obviously people can have a different views about it. But we all know very famous Pakistani British singer called Zayn Malik, and he was the member of he was a former ex-member of the band called One Direction, right? But now he has left it, of course. So he is featuring in one of the Pakistani Urdu single, and people are many excited because he is collaborating with an Or brand, right?
Yes.
So have you listened to the Or brand?
Yes, I've heard the song, and I've actually kind of read Zayn's remarks as well, because he said that I love the song and I wanted to be a part of it,
oh, wonderful,
one way or the other, and so he did become a part of it as well, and I think it was a great start for Or band as well, that for them to Zayn Malik featuring within one of their songs as well. But having said so, I think, Haja, what we really need to kind of talk about over here is that imagine that just because that Zayn Malik was a part of this song, imagine that people have started to recognize Or band as well. Now, what I wanted to raise awareness was about that, imagine that Or band was already producing music which was likable by people like Zayn Malik, all right? But people away in Pakistan didn't know about Or, but him sitting somewhere else, probably 7 seas across, realized that this is nice music and I wanted to be a part of it. So I think this is where Pakistani people need to be more aware about their artists and what sort of music are they coming up with. Imagine everybody would know about Sajad Ali, everybody would know about Atif Aslam, everybody would know about all of these recognized artists worldwide. But imagine that people who've been working hard to make sure that they come in under the or in the limelight, unfortunately there are not a lot of people or platforms who share their work as well. And unfortunately, if it wasn't for Zayn Malik, I don't think that, Or band would have gotten such sort of a marketing worldwide or world over. So I think this is something which is heart-wrenching for me. But thank you so much, Zayn Malik, that, that you considered the song and you thought that you wanted to be a part of it. Because him saying it, in one of his interviews, he said that, when I heard the song, I wanted to be a part of it, and that's what I tried, and I'm a part of it now.
And considering the fact that he was born in the Bradford, he is a Pakistani British, but he knows the Urdu, and considering the fact that he remarked that he's incredibly humbled that Or brand approached him for this collaboration, I think this means a lot. But Shahzad, one thing is very important in this entire conversation is that social media has given a power to lots of people who were marginalized before, who did not have a platform, especially when we talk about our music industry. And they have gained a lot of fame because of the social media. But obviously, gaining fame and then maintaining the momentum of that fame is very difficult task, because we are living in a digital era where we have a very short-term memories, and that virality, the element of virality, it goes, and but it was very short-lived. After some time, people forget that, and then people move to something new. So maintaining that in this era is, I think, certainly a challenge, but we hope and pray and wish best of luck to the Or brand and this collaboration with Zayn Malik, because Pakistani music industry is creating waves not just inside Pakistan but globally across the world, and this is a moment of pride.
And you know, we have an evidence of that. And imagine that, you know, every other song that, you know, Bollywood comes out with, you know, so they're making sure that, you know, any of the singers who's actually doing a playback singing should sound like Atif Aslam. So even if they're not hiring Atif Aslam to sing their songs, or whatever differences we have in between the countries, imagine that that's the kind of iconic voice that they would require for their films to get hit as well. In addition to this, Haja, I have a very different feeling when I say about this, or I talk about this, because you've spoken about overnight fame over digital media. I think it's great. But when we talk about digital media platforms, I guess in today's time, if somebody is still complaining that I'm not being heard, I think that it's going to be his or her fault. And it's because of the fact that you have so many platforms where you can put your content up and people can watch you. And if still they're not being watched, there are only two issues. And one of those issues we will be addressing today. So imagine that in recent times that the overnight success that we have seen is with Chahat Fateh Ali Khan, okay, number one. Number two, if we are to see Party Ho Rahi Hai, you know, so imagine the kind of content, you know, I just wanted you guys to kind of realize that what kind of content are we consuming. So not just that, I think in addition to this, you know, there are multiple other people. There's Ducky Bai, you know, there's other people, you know, family vlogging and whatnot. Some of them are doing great jobs. You know, for example, I will talk about Muru, I'll talk about Irfan Janejo, I'll talk about these amazing gentlemen who have been putting up some amazing content. But imagine, on the other hand, we do have people who are doing pranks, we do have people who are doing podcasts, and all of a sudden in Pakistan, what happens is that, you know, if there's one formula that clicks for somebody, all of a sudden everybody wants to do the same thing as well. So don't you think that as a nation, if we are consuming such content, how do you think that it will have an impact on us, on our future generation in days to come?
And thank you so much for pointing it out there, because this brings us or catapults us into our segment today, which is about how people consume the news and how particularly women who are in the field of journalism are contributing towards the diversity in the news, or especially when it comes to tackling problems like misinformation, disinformation, fake news, all of these very widespread problems, how to deal with that. So without any further ado, we are very glad that we have been joined by one of the very famous journalists inside our studio. She is a true beauty with the brains. She is also a human rights lawyer. At the intersection of that, she has been exploring a lot of journalistic questions, and we are very glad that we have been joined by Miss Arooj Raza Sayami. Assalamu alaikum, madam, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Walaikum assalam, and very good morning to you, and to you as well, and to the entire team of PTV World. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be here. Though you have woken me up sorely, but it's comfortable now.
Right.
And it's an honor. It's an honor to have such a senior journalist over here, and for everybody who's out there, because we got in 46 different countries. The profile is literally very lengthy. Imagine, I think that she started studying at whatever age, 3 or 4 years old, and she's still studying till date. Happens to be political assistant to ex-Chief Minister of Punjab on human rights, community mentor for leadership, electronic and print media journalism, you know, from Germany, media studies, national security workshop, national media workshop, Massive Maritime Security Workshop, Naval War College Lahore, Masters in English, LLB. I mean, there's so much stuff that you've been doing. How do you make sure that you're just going to stick to journalism? You know, let's get started with that.
Also, we would like to talk about a very interesting term that you coined, which is inclusive journalism. What is it about? Please enlighten us.
My profile actually tells a story of all my struggling life. I started my journalistic career in a very early age when I was a student. I was studying law in Karachi in SM Law College, and there I used to work on Radio FM. So there some authority from Dawn News, they picked me up and they asked me to host a show. I said, okay, yeah, because I was studying law. So they asked me to do a human rights beat. in Karachi, in Sindh. So this is how it started. But later on, when I got scholarship in Deutsche Welle, so meanwhile I did completed my LLB studies, and then I went to Deutsche Welle and I did my professional studies there, like electronic media studies, and then I started my law education in the second university, in second time, and there my mentors and my dean, actually they defined the career line for me, and they said, well, you are qualified as attorney at law, so and now you are studying journalism, electronic and social media studies, so why don't you pick up this line? Why are you more into defense and into political affairs? You have this vast field, so you can excel very well in this field, so you go for that. And then I gave it a thought, and I personally considered it well going it with me in my career, because I thought and I realized I know better than the TV anchors who actually were talking about human rights, but they were not knowing the constitutional procedures and constitutional, you know.
So you had a better understanding and a deeper understanding of that as well.
So I thought to do it myself, and then it started.
So, you know, we will certainly come back to your human rights journey and how you've advocated and how you've been writing about it and how you've been, you know, all over, you know, whenever we talk about news and TV channels, it's great. But for somebody who initially started with law, ended up in Germany, and then made sure that, okay, that she's going to advocate about human rights, it sounds beautiful. But it must be full of challenges as well for someone to have a better understanding. Okay, law, that's fine. Then you went to Germany, you studied over there. But then to understand constitutionally, because imagine that when we say journalist or a journalism related field, what happens is that, you know, that the laws will vary from one place to another place. So how was it for you to kind of have a global understanding of the human rights or the human rights violation, or whichever agencies are working towards human rights? How did you gather or garner that understanding in your career?
Shahzad, thank you very much for asking me this particularly and pertinently very important question, because when we talk about human rights and its preservations from the violations, we always forget what law says about that, you know. When you see some violations on social media and you start believing that, you know, this state is very bad, it's violating all human rights, but you don't know what was the reason behind and what was the reaction behind, and how the law of that country sees it, and was it already a violation done by the citizen or the person, or it's just a human rights violation. So we have to see it in the lens of law.
Okay.
You know, when we live in a state, so we are duty bound. We have to observe what are our rights and what are our responsibilities. And when we talk about the rights, so responsibilities comes first.
True.
Oh yes.
You know,
Yes.
And if we are responsible to maintain law around us, then you will see very minute and minor human rights violations around you. But if you do not comprehend your responsibilities along with your work and your daily life, then you will see lots of violations around you. So it's us, you know, it's not the state or the some department or organizations who is actually violating your rights. It's us who are violating and ruining our rights, and then we, you know, we tear and we make noise and hue and cry on social media, look, our rights are violated. But we do not claim, we do not say that it was our responsibility and we were failed to complete it and we were failed to hold it, you know. So before accusing someone for the violation of your rights, you must see how do you say it? How did you do it? Visual.
Or whether are you violating somebody else's
Exactly.
right?
And
Yeah,
we need to do a
yeah.
lot of self
Yeah.
introspection, which is missing nowadays,
Yeah.
because like you alluded to it, that this is the our responsibility
Yeah.
to be more responsible on
Yeah.
social media. So
Exactly.
now let's develop a conversation on the impact of social media. And women bring a lot of diversity to the newsroom, but let's discuss the role of newsroom, because which is eroding nowadays, because filters are going on. Anyone can write anything on the social media, it can go viral, it can become a news, and obviously that is why we see this is a very breeding ground, flourishing ground for the fake news, misinformation, disinformation. How do we deal with this very pertinent challenge?
I think every journalist should deal with it, and they already actually deal with that. Irony is that every person who have eyes and who can read and who can write.
But how do we define the role
yeah.
of a journalist, right? Because
Yes.
anyone can claim to be
This
a
is what
journalist.
I am
Minimum
going to
journalist.
say.
Yes,
this
yes.
is what I am going to narrate now.
Sure,
that
go ahead.
not every news feed is the news,
Oh,
and
yes.
not every so-called claimed journalist, proclaimed journalist is a journalist.
Journalist.
You know.
That's true.
But why not? Why not?
Why not? Because if you are a doctor, how can you cut my hair as barber? You don't know how
You know, we have
to be a barber.
We have an anchor person who is a doctor. so
Yeah. Who is a doctor? Yeah, a doctor can
But she's not a
anchor a
journalist.
good.
yeah.
Doctor can anchor a good show, but doctor cannot, make aeroplane to fly.
True.
So these are particular boundaries where we have to be specialized. And you talked about how we define that
Who a journalist is.
who is a journalist and who is not. So I belong to an old school of journalism. So I still believe in news websites, newspapers,
yes.
television channels.
A lot of reading.
Yeah,
rather than
lots of
filters
reading,
in there,
lots
right.
of reading. And I do not, in my entire life, I haven't watched any vlog. You see, I read columns,
Okay.
I
That's
study websites, but authentic websites, because there are lots of fake websites who
Yeah.
are actually spreading fake news,
Nowadays,
propaganda, and
authentic websites are
everything.
also spreading its fake news,
So
right?
we-
This is what we are seeing in
We
the Gaza
must
news.
know.
Yes.
We must know what is the source of news. Who is bringing this news to us? So I think
Digital
our
literacy
viewers
is
should know and differentiate between the news and the fake news.
Exactly. And in addition to this, because this conversation is very interesting, I believe that everybody out there who's actually kind of sipping their coffee or tea from the cup. Now, what happens is that over here, I think growing up in Pakistan, the only kind of journalism that we are very well aware of is the investigative journalism. I'm very sorry, but I think that's how it is. And so I think that the definition or how any Pakistani can describe a journalist is that one particular person who's going to break a news, okay? That,
Yeah.
okay, this is something that which was happening.
Exactly.
And, so you saying and referring that you read a lot of columns, there's a lot of
Yeah.
reading, a lot of observation is great.
Right.
But don't you think that a journalist really needs to get their hands onto the first-hand source of whatever news that they're going to break? Or do you think that it can be from columns, because then it won't be first-hand, right? The source won't be
Yeah.
first-hand.
Yeah.
So do you think that that's like a challenge for every journalist out there to get those sources out? कोई कहता है मैंने सुनहरी चिड़िया रखी हुई है, कोई कहता है
Exactly.
मुझे कबूतर आके बता गए, things like that. So
This
how
is
do you
rubbish.
take
This is
that?
rubbish. I don't believe in such stories. Yeah, this is rubbish.
No, obviously because they do not want to name them
I
kabotar,
actually
na?
faced this challenge when I joined a private television channel in Pakistan after coming back from Deutsche Welle. So people asked me, hey, you are a star reporter. And another thing which I should define, that who is a journalist? Journalist is the person who actually works in the field, collects the story and then works
Yup.
on the story and other things. So I used to work like that. So I was asked, you are a star journalist of Election Commission, so you can get hold on the story before anyone else. So I said, okay. So I broke so many stories, and one day I just got stuck with my thoughts. This is the journalism I assumed, I've been teaching, and what sort of journalism now I am actually pursuing. It's not my field. Then I actually started working as a journalist, and I refused to work like that.
Right.
I said the kind of investigative journalism and the idea of investigative journalism, I do not believe.
Right, and I think we also need to focus on one of the very, thank you so much for very succinctly pointing that out, and the concept of the digital literacy, that people need to be aware of what's a fake news, because it is your responsibility when you are going through your feeds, when you're going through your statuses, you need to know what is right, what is wrong, right? And responsibility again lies within you. But you have done lots of security workshops and you have done the NDU, Marso. So what is the role of these security workshops in better comprehending, I mean, the role or the issues of defense related matters and all of these? Please explain to us.
And nothing against, obviously, because I guess that it's a part of the learning curve, but don't you think that when you attend such workshops and conferences, that you already are predisposed to kind of talk in favor of those workshops?
Oh, it's
sorry, I'm sorry that I'm putting you into this spot.
It's splendid. Yes. Basically, when I did my international leadership course in Germany, in Gummersbach, and it's a very high-profile leadership course. True. I came back to Pakistan, and then one fine morning, I got a call that you have been selected for NDU National Media Workshop, and the year later, I was offered for National Security Workshop. Believe me, the difference was very obvious, because the country where you live in, you must be knowing the facts and the issues of the countries, of the people, and the role of your country, which is actually fighting hard to survive. True. So the role of such workshops, I think, is a very vital part of my personality. Okay. Whatever I am today is actually polished by these workshops and such learning. Before these workshops, I was having another perspective about Pakistan's defense and about Pakistan's sovereignty and about Pakistan as a state. But after receiving so much knowledge from such workshops, from maritime, I came to know about the blue economy, you know, and the other issues.
Did you ever challenge that data, those statistics which shared with you? Did you ever got back and thought that, okay, you know, let me recheck it, let me
of
kind
course,
of go
as a journalist, I had many questions, and you know, I was actually,
and as a human, right?
I had so many questions, and I used to ask those questions, and I was very popular, for asking such nasty questions, you know. But they were kind enough to reply me with so much, you know, knowledge and kindness. And let me tell you, I am still grieving over the sad demise of Ambassador Riaz Khokhar. So we had mentors like him. You know, we have mentors like diplomats, like big icon from academia and big lawyers and such wonderful people in these workshops. So in academia, you are learning from constant teachers, but in those workshops, you are actually getting information from different, various segments of life. So and people are having diverse, you know, knowledge and knowledge and plus professionalism.
And coming from different walks of life, having a better understanding of what they are actually doing.
So after receiving those workshops, actually I became a professional journalist. That's why you don't see me in any Pakistani television working at the moment, because I know patriotically every person should be knowing what's the rights and responsibility of the state on him, her, and what are role and responsibility of a person who is living in this state. So it was all about that.
But I think Shahzad hinted to subtly hinted to a very interesting conversation about the objectivity, which is nowadays especially debated a lot in the journalism schools, that there is no objectivity, because as a human being you do have biases, right? You are biased towards a particular position, and especially when you are writing a story, so you know the framing of the entire story has your bias in that, right? So the role of objectivity is dying. So what do you have to say about the role of dying objectivity in the newsrooms?
Newsroom should work like a very neutral desk.
But that can't happen,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That
But then, you know, it's hard to sell them.
I know. It's a big challenge for news channels and for newsroom, basically because every person who is working on the news and making and producing it have its own, you know, liking, disliking.
Prejudices.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
especially how we see that the Western mainstream media is covering the Gaza war, right?
Yeah.
So it is not an objective assessment at all what's going on, the situation that is on the ground.
I think every state seeks its own benefits and interest.
Foreign
So
interests.
they issue statements based on their own interest.
That's true.
And
So there is no objectivity, right?
no objectivity. And I think we should not object on that, because everyone has this right constitutionally to preserve its own rights first, and then to talk about the other rights. So first let us
first it's us and
do
then
our
it's-
responsibilities. Yeah.
Exactly, and in addition to that, you know, I would like to connect it with this. So imagine that in recent times we have seen away in Pakistan, you know, there's been this trend that, you know, a lot of famous journalists would actually become a part of the government and would
Yeah.
take a seat, you know,
Yeah.
will head like, for example, Pakistan Cricket Board. We have seen
Yeah,
Najam
I know,
Shetty Saab, we have seen Najam Shetty Saab, you know,
Yeah.
being the chairman, and he's done a phenomenally good job as well, and there's no harm in it. But, you know, I'm very sorry that I'll have to come down to this,
Yeah.
but you happen to be the political assistant to
Yeah.
ex-chief minister on Punjab
Yeah.
on human rights. Is great. For somebody who is an expert in the field, you know, assisting the chief minister is wonderful. But how do you think, don't you think that, you know, that's where, you know, Hajra pointed out that, you know, everybody will have their own biases as
Yeah.
well. Now imagine that if you're a part of the government, if you are with the chief minister, no matter whether the chief minister is right or wrong, don't you think that you as a journalist won't be able to kind of voice your concern if they have taken a wrong decision just because you're working with them? So how as a journalist is it, and why do you see that there's an increasing trend
Yeah.
of journalists coming into these posts?
My post was a pro bono post. I was not getting any, you know,
No,
benefit
that's
or
not what the
other
question
things.
is, but imagine how will you kind
Yeah,
of disagree?
this is what I am going to tell you, that if you are free, if you are working freely with your free wish and will, then you are not duty bound to defend any wrongdoings of any person or authority.
Okay.
So I was appointed not because of the political affiliation, because I am not part of any political party. I was actually picked up because of my work. I was raising human rights issues on international forums. I was working for women's rights, for women in prisons and juveniles, and I was working about the reforms of their lives in prison.
So you kind of
and
suggested what can be
exactly.
done.
So it was not my job to you know, sign a paper or to give orders to any
You were there to
authority.
give-
I was giving suggestion to CM Punjab that you need to focus on this, you need to work on this, and he was kind enough that he exactly did what I suggested.
It's great, it's great, but you know,
Yeah.
this question is not for you to, I mean, to answer about yourself,
Yeah.
but rather,
Yeah,
you
but-
know,
but-
what the
but other
practice is.
people-
But the next time they can't claim that they are an objective journalist, right?
Yeah.
Because they do have their
No,
biases.
no,
and
no,
this is
no.
the point of that.
I have seen so many journalists who were appointed on political positions. They worked really good.
Of course, they were
Yeah,
really
they
good.
worked good, but few were biased.
being a
Few were
journalist and
actually
then-
taking
their future
benefits.
commentaries about
Yeah.
the politics are not going to be a bias-free
No, no,
commentary,
A journalist
right?
cannot pick a side now. You
Yeah,
know, that's what it is.
exactly, exactly. So you must take this position or appointment as technocrat seat, because the technocrat
Interesting,
does
great,
not
yes.
hold any political affiliation or political responsibility. But if any good technocrat can assist in any government, I think they should
Why not?
work.
Why not? Yes.
Why not?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And I think last question before we wrap up this entire segment is that women, especially in the journalism, they face more harassment than their male colleagues, because obviously the character assassination part, and especially that we see the free fall on the social media, it's very damning to see how things are turning out, right? So as someone who has been affiliated with this field for such a long time, What do you have to say about the harassment part, and what are some of the avenues that we can access and approach if we feel that there's lots of online or digital harassment that is going on?
My stance is a little different.
Sure.
Because there are two types of harassment. One is cyber harassment digitally, and one is physically. Well, I don't have a such experience, and I was working with male team members, and I worked in newsrooms, and I did not face any situation of harassment in Pakistan, neither in Pakistan nor in Germany. So I have worked in America as well, but I did not see any situation of. But I see lots of harassment on social media, and why is so? I think I should not comment on that, why it is so, yeah.
All right, and since you're keeping your comments to yourself very quickly towards the end, you know, as Haja has mentioned, what are the major responsibilities of any journalist, whoever is listening to us, if they're new to the field, what do you think are the major responsibilities?
Our responsibilities as a journalist and as a Pakistani journalist, we must see what are our roles and responsibility rather than talking about our rights. And another thing is, since Pakistan is facing external propaganda, external and internal wars, we must see news kahan se aa rahi hai.
Okay.
Right.
You
The
know,
source.
the news feeds credibility, we must check whether it goes against our sovereignty or in favor of
national
our
interest, yes.
national interest, of course. So the journalist must seek this credibility of a news feed
And that
must
happens
work
to
on
be the
that.
topmost priority and one of the most major responsibility
Yeah.
for any journalist or people who want to be a journalist as
Yeah.
well. Please always make sure that whatever source you're getting your information from needs to be 100% authentic.
Yeah.
Cross-check it at least 10 times before you spread the news as well. But thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you so
Raza,
much.
for being with us. It was lovely to be in conversation
Thank you
with
so
you.
Thank
We're
you so
very
much for
sorry
having
that
me.
there were a couple of tough questions in between as well.
No,
But we hope that you enjoyed.
I am pretty happy for
Wonderful.
that.
I think that's great for anybody to be happy over here on our show. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're heading out towards a short break, and it's because of these journalists that we still do know that there's climate change out there, which is going to hurt us in coming days as well.
Right.
Let's talk about it a little more after a short break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Haan na yaar?
Welcome back, and before going on to the break, Shehzad alluded to the fact that we are going to talk about the climate change, and we also mentioned that how it is one of the pertinent issues that is afflicting Pakistan, and because of the anomalies in the weather pattern, we are witnessing no rain at all in Pakistan, and this is very concerning. So we would not like to monopolize a conversation and kickstart a conversation, because we have a very worthy guest in our studio who's going to talk about the climate change and how it is adversely impacting Pakistan. We are very glad that we have been joined by one of the best climate change expert in Pakistan. He happens to be Rashid Aftab Sahab. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thanks for
Sir,
having me.
so let's start a conversation on the climate change, and we are seeing these anomalous weather patterns inside the Pakistan, and obviously that requires a collective fight by the humanity, but we don't see a consensus gathering. I mean, there's a consensus, there's a conversations, but there's no action on the ground. How can we combat the climate change?
Obviously, when we talk about the climate change, we have to think what is a climate change, what are the relevant factors which are very much pertinent to the climate change. When I write a mathematical equation of climate change,
Right,
it has got two variables. One is water
right,
and other is temperature.
okay,
And those both of the variables are very important in context with Pakistan. That if we see the climate vulnerability index, Pakistan falls in the first 10 countries. Everybody
yes.
knows it about it. Why it is so? Because our rooftop is comprises of at least 7,300 glaciers are there.
oh yes,
Now we are not carbon emitter country.
that's true.
We are not creating any pollution. Our contribution to the pollution is less than 1%.
That's
0.005%.
Yes, I mean
It's
that's
like
why
nothing.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
less than 1%,
Yeah.
just to have a round figure,
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
not going into the decimal and. Acha.
It's good in maths, alhamdulillah.
Polluters are different countries,
Of course.
obviously US, China, Iran, all these countries they are creating pollution. So what happened, but impact of obviously pollution doesn't need any visa to cross the border.
Of course.
So we are being impacted severely. So what is happening? That's why we are facing. Sometimes there is no rain, sometimes there is flood, sometimes there is a drought. This is a very unprecedented phenomena which is happening in this country. Think in terms of what is its impact.
Right.
We will have to see the impact in terms of glacier melt, snow melt, and the river flows. Okay. So, and obviously this water is very much critical. It is our lifeline.
True.
Because it is directly related with our food security.
That's true.
And not only food security as well as water security by itself. And it has a correlation with the energy security, because the cheapest source of energy is produced from the hydro energy.
That's true.
So, so what we have to do, I think what you were specifically asking, we have to develop, although some of the work has been done, but on the ground it is not been visible.
Right, right.
That we have to redefine and we have to develop our policy and planning to address these sectors.
Don't we already have these policies?
I mean those policies, I give you an example.
Okay, sure.
Policies are implemented through the programs and the projects.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
of course.
We do have a climate change policy, we do have a water
have all sorts
policy,
of
we all
policies,
these this are full of policies
Yes.
are lying in the corridors of secretariats. So, but we have to think what is the implementation of those policies. The policies are implemented through specific projects. Our planning process, which includes the projects, obviously responsibility rests on the Planning Commission of Pakistan, has to be redesigned in accordance with the climate change. Still our planning process has not very little focus is on the climate change.
Right.
So, all the projects, whether those projects are related to any of the area, it must it must account for the climate change factor, number one. Number two,
True.
what happened in COP 28?
Yes.
You are visible that they have been able to generate, it's a very lukewarm response
Yes,
from
of course.
all the
Major stakeholders.
contributors
Yes.
of the
Yeah.
pollution.
Yes.
That only 3 point something billion dollar has been generated. Now it's almost around $13.5 billion is in the green fund, because one thing at least they have realized in the preceding meetings, that now we have to consider loss and damage aspect.
True.
Because before it this is loss and damage is more legal in nature, because the countries which are facing the loss, you are witness about the flood 22, what happened in Pakistan.
$40 billion of loss.
Just imagine, unbelievable. Secondly, we have to exploit that fund. We have to develop those projects which are compatible to that green fund as well.
True.
In addition to mobilize our national resources or national planning process.
And sir, due to the paucity of the time, I would like to quickly explore the gendered impact on the climate change. For example, the women who are working in the fields, especially in the southern Punjab area, we see because there is no rainfall and because the agriculture is badly impacted, like you mentioned, that our water policy, water security is linked to the climate change aspect of that. How can we protect those women out there, because they're also struggling to raising their children out there, they're also working on the fields, and when their men are especially not there because they have moved
And
to
their
their
salaries are unaccounted for, they're not being paid.
they are invisible workers, right, which are contributing to Pakistan's GDP in terms of agriculture.
There is no doubt in it. I'm usually neutral expert. I'm not much gender biased.
Yeah.
That who is affecting climate is change is
Affecting
affecting
everybody.
both of the gender,
Of course.
including children, including all the genders. Obviously, the woman factor is more important because in the rural areas, movements are responsible to bring the water
Right.
from the far area.
areas.
Obviously, their vulnerability is more.
It has increased, yes.
But the structural issues which we have to address, that we have to change our climatic, agroclimatic zones.
Yes, yes,
Agroclimatic zones from where our food is coming.
yes.
20% of GDP comes from the agriculture, 46% of the people, their livelihood belongs from the rural area, mostly from the agriculture related areas. So, we have to change our agroclimatic zones in accordance with the new climate factor.
According to the new climate cycle as well, so how things are working as well, because we have seen wildfires, we've seen floods, we're seeing Arctic blasts, not just that shift in harvesting as well. Now, sir, there are two questions, and we only left with 4 minutes. That is, number one, what projects have been conducted or undertaken to kind of take benefit of that fund which have been created with reference to COP28? And number two, what about SDGs? Nobody's talking about SDGs now.
The SDG, I consider SDG is very much compatible to the climate change.
True.
Yes.
SDG came in 2015.
Yep.
Climate action, Paris Accord, it also came into 2015. And one of the climate SDG is related with the climate action.
Yep.
One of the, and that is compatible. But in the larger spectrum, since SDG also related with the food security, SDG is also related with the water security, SDG is also related with the vulnerability, SDG is also related with the climate action. So, that's what I am saying, that our plans as well as policies, plans and the projects,
And the infrastructure.
they must be obviously when we develop a projects and we execute, the infrastructure is the part of those projects. So, these has to be compatible, number one. Number two, we usually consider climate change from a single lens, which is a climate change policy. But the climate change policy must be compatible with our water policy, has to be compatible with our agriculture policy, has to be compatible with the energy policy as well. And recently IMF have asked us that our projects to be developed in accordance with the climate reality. So, our PC1, which is called the policy cycle, PC1, PC2, PC3, PC5, has to be redefined and must be compatible to the new climate reality.
And this reminds me of these two gentlemen, sir, who were actually working in United States of America, left their jobs, came down to Pakistan, went to attend COP28, and they came back and they weren't really very happy. So imagine that there were private entrepreneurs who wanted to develop projects, in accordance and in sync with the government as well. But unfortunately, the people at the helm of affairs didn't had a better understanding of what you were actually talking about, because the policy needs to kind of be done again as well. Now, very quickly, sir, one last question. If Pakistan was a country with foreign deposits, or probably whenever we talk about, how rich a country is, for example, $500 billion, if that's where we were at that point of time, do you think that we would have been bothered about climate change as much as we are as of now?
No, we have to. There is no other option.
Okay.
It doesn't matter how much money you have in your pocket.
Reserves, yes.
It's a very hard reality.
True.
We must we have to address it
So
on
being
a war footing
contributor
basis.
and being vulnerable at the same time.
Yeah. Obviously, because even
proactive
in a country like United States, you are witness how much they are
The Arctic
facing.
blast as of now is going on over there. Unfortunately, a lot of people have been, kind of misplaced. There's frostbite, and it's very unfortunate
Very
to see,
freezing temperatures
how
there,
it is going
yes.
on. So I think everybody needs to kind of have this proactive approach towards that as well. But thank you so much,
Thank you so
Rajbhai,
much.
for
The
being with
proactive
us.
approach has to be applied.
Exactly,
Or
because
prevention area has to
the
be
cure. Yes,
account for.
exactly
Right.
because, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we are vulnerable because of the actions of people who are not even within our own country. or
Because
probably
climate
countries
is knocking
themselves.
our doors. It has already, its
Seeped in.
footprints are visible in Pakistan.
And we can feel the effects of that. And with that, we will wrap up our segment and once again say thank you to our very worthy guest, Rashid Saab, for coming here. Thank you so much for having this very
Jazakallah ji, thank
enlightening
you.
cross-pollination of ideas regarding the climate change and how, as a humanity, we need to gather under this very pertinent platform of the climate change. So until next time, it's a goodbye, Allah Hafiz, and good morning.
Morning. Look after.